Fox News alert this morning, U.S. senators getting their first look at a single copy of the FBI's latest probe of Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
Democratic Senator and Judiciary Committee member Chris Coons joins us now. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What is your reaction to what the Wall Street Journal, what we're hearing is in this report, that the FBI found no evidence of sexual misconduct against Judge Kavanaugh?
Corroboration.
Well, you know, a week ago today, both Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh were before the Judiciary Committee. Dr. Ford gave a powerful and compelling testimony, and Judge Kavanaugh gave a vigorous, full-throated defense. And I respect deeply my friend Jeff Flake, Republican senator from Arizona, for asking for a week for a quick FBI investigation into the allegations before the committee at the time. I think that was important, both for Dr. Ford to be heard and her allegations to be investigated, as well as for Judge Kavanaugh and his family to have a chance at some clearing of some of these allegations. So I haven't seen the report yet.
Right.
It is my expectation that there will have been FBI interviews pursuant to the scope that the Republican majority in the Senate delivered to the White House and conveyed to the FBI. And I am expecting that there will be some relevant and interesting information in this report today.
Senator, we understand 9 people were spoken to. Originally it was going to be 4, it seemed, and now it's 9 people were spoken to, including Deborah Ramirez. Are you happy? And we have 3 of his friends there, and we know about the friend of Dr. Ford, who has not corroborated that story. Are you happy with the witness list?
I urged the White House and I urged my 3 Republican colleague friends to press for a broader investigation that would include follow-ons. So, for example, if Debbie Ramirez was interviewed, as I believe she was last Sunday, and at the end of the interview she says to the FBI agents questioning her, here are several people, classmates, who can corroborate what I just told you, and here's how to reach them, I would have expected they would have been questioned. If Dr. Ford came forward and said, as Judge Janine was just saying pointedly, if Dr. Ford came forward and said, I described this assault several times over several years to other people, I would have expected they would have been questioned. My understanding, having not seen this report yet, is they were not. And that may well be pursuant to the direction that the Senate majority gave to the White House. Senator,
you said even before this time out, you were a no. So I don't get where this was going to go. I mean, it's not like this these allegations, as the FBI looked into them, you were suddenly going to turn into a yes, because you were always going to be a no based on policy.
So last Friday morning, that's where we stood. Senator Flake had already said he was inclined to vote yes. I had already said I was inclined to vote no. And that was based on policy. Look, Jeff is a real conservative. He wants a conservative Supreme Court. I'm not. I don't. That's a difference on legal policy. But we agreed that it was tearing the committee apart right in front of us to have these 2 powerful speakers on Thursday not have any independent corroboration or investigation by the FBI.
One of the reasons it was tearing the committee apart was the fact that, you know, the leader on your side sat on this letter from Dr. Ford until the 11th hour. You know, she apparently received it back in July. Fast forward until the 11th hour, the maximum time to inflict damage on Brett Kavanaugh, and that's when it was sprung. That's where that's why there's such division.
That is one of several reasons why there is such division. I think what was important about my remarks on Friday that helped move Senator Flake to think about this was I recognize that. I do not believe that Senator Feinstein personally is responsible for leaking this letter. In fact, I think she sat on it. So let me finish. Let me finish. I believe she sat on it for so long because she was respecting Dr. Ford's request for confidentiality, and she had no intention of sharing it with the committee or the public.
Senator,
it was leaked by someone with a partisan motive. That I think that's something we can all conclude.
But
we
Senator,
don't know who that was.
And if we wanted to get the answer to that, my sense is if that came to you, just judging by your track record, you would have said, you would have asked Kavanaugh when you had him one-on-one because you wanted to find out and get the right person. But bad decision was made by your ranking member, in my estimation. I want to bring you to this. 8 Democrats in the Senate Judiciary Committee, I imagine you, sent a letter to Republicans on Wednesday suggesting the past FBI investigations unveiled inappropriate sexual behavior or alcohol abuse from Brett Kavanaugh? Is that true? You picked this up in past investigation and waited till today to tell us?
An important piece there was I was not a signer of that. But let's be clear about what this specific back and forth is about. The majority on the Judiciary Committee, Chairman Grassley, texted or tweeted out last night that in the previous background investigations, there was not a whiff of any allegations around drinking or sexual misconduct. And I believe Senator Durbin, with whom I just spoke, responded, that's not true. We're now into something that is confidential, and this is a back and forth between the majority and minority about something both sides know was in the background investigation.
So there was a whiff.
That doesn't clear the standard of not a whiff.
All right, Senator Coons.
Wait, can we just follow up? Why didn't you sign it? Why didn't you sign it?
I wasn't aware that this letter was being distributed last night. I've now had a chance to talk to Senator Durbin. I now know what he's referring to. This is not the sort of back and forth by the majority and the minority that is constructive, frankly, because we can't tell the public what's in the background investigation. There is nothing in here that is some bombshell that is unknown.
All right, Senator Coons, you're going to read the FBI information, the report at 10 a.m. If you read it and you walk out of that room and you feel like Judge Kavanaugh is innocent, how do you feel about what he's gone through publicly?
I will tell you that listening to Judge Kavanaugh's aggressive and full-throated defense of his innocence, it was hard, especially watching his wife and mother, not to have some empathy for how he felt, convinced that he was wrongly accused. I really did have trouble with the partisan nature of his direct attack on Democrats broadly and the Democrats on the committee in particular. I think Judge Kavanaugh would have been better served leaving those arguments to his partisan defenders. We are elected as politicians.
Right.
We do at times attack each other from a partisan perspective. I don't think a sitting judge should have come at us with quite that tone.
And you must have been just as upset when Supreme Court Justice Bader Ginsburg had something very partisan. Let's take a quick look at it right now. She said this. I can't imagine what this place would be. I can't imagine what this country would be with Donald Trump as our president. For the country, it could be 4 years. For the court, it could be, I don't even want to contemplate that. So obviously, you're not worried. You didn't express a worry about a partisanship there.
That's right. I was unaware of that particular comment. That is also inappropriate. Sitting judges, sitting justices should not make comments about partisan politics in a way that would lead litigants in front of them to question whether they are fair and impartial judges or justices.
Isn't it easy to throw stones, though, when you're not the one sitting on the stand in front of everyone in front of the country and everyone's accusing you or judging you for something there's no evidence that you ever did? Wouldn't you have the same tone if you had your wife and your mom there and your kids listening to all of this and someone was accusing you, a woman was accusing you of this? I'm not saying something didn't happen to her, but there's no evidence. And he has a stellar reputation.
I disagree that there's no evidence. I believe I would have the same. Let me finish. Let me finish, please. I believe I would have the same tone if unjustly accused of something I was certain I did not commit. And absolutely, with my wife and daughter and children around me, it would be hard not to be angry. What I was pointing out here was, I think he crossed a line in making it a partisan personal attack on Democrats on the committee. That was uncalled for. I understand his anger. And I do think part of why Senator Flake and I thought this further background investigation was warranted was so that the allegations made by Dr. Ford and Ms. Ramirez could be further investigated and the result be either they are corroborated or the judge is cleared. I don't think enough people were interviewed to reach that full result.
Senator, is this the new standard going forward?
I certainly hope not.
You're going to look at high school yearbooks. You're going to look at kids' calendars. You're going to look at whether or not somebody threw ice at somebody in a bar.
I do think what we're going to see now is more thorough vetting frankly, now when companies do hiring, when I do hiring, we ask people about social media posts. We ask about social behaviors in high school and college. My hunch is that most major corporations, most senators, most judicial background checks are now going to look more deeply. But I do think we have to be clear as members of the Judiciary Committee about how we set a standard for a fair process. There are issues here about this process being predictable and fair that we have to address if we're going to be able to work together. Look, if I could say in closing, yesterday, the Senate passed 2 big bipartisan bills to deal with the opioid crisis, to authorize the FAA. They're going to the president's desk for signature. He supports both. That gets no coverage. We are still doing important work together, and we need to recognize if we can't work together, the country can't move forward.
It's guys like you that are going to do it or not, because there's certain people that are just too dug in. Senator, lastly, you said something I thought was very telling. You did not want a conservative judge on the Supreme Court. Jeff Flake did. Well, Senator Lindsey Graham didn't want a liberal judge like Kagan.
That's correct.
And Sotomayor, but he voted for him because they were competent. Brett Kavanaugh is competent, but he just doesn't agree with you, and yet he can't get your vote. Why?
In my view, the jurisprudence of Judge Kavanaugh is well outside the mainstream. I think his views on presidential power and on individual liberty are beyond the mainstream of American jurisprudence. I don't think that's the case with Kagan and Sotomayor, but my friend Senator Graham has made that point to me personally and forcefully, that in his view, the confirmation process has gotten away from looking at credentials and credibility and into ideology.
Right.
Senator,
go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. Do you understand why the American people are so upset right now?
Yes.
Can you explain that, elaborate? Why are they so upset?
I think there are 2 reasons. I think there are folks who watch this entire process and they think that Judge Kavanaugh was not treated fairly. I think there are folks who watch this whole process and say that Dr. Ford and Debbie Ramirez were not taken seriously. And I think there are folks across the spectrum in the United States who worry about the message it sends to our children, our country, and the world when we have senators yelling at each other, accusing each other, challenging each other's motives. And it seems that we are going to be in a period where nominations to the Supreme Court pass by 51-49 rather than by 60, 70, or 80 votes. The Senate is the saucer that cools the hot tea of the House in the vision of the founders. This is a cracked saucer. This is a broken institution, and we have to find ways to respect each other and work together again.
Something on a bipartisan level, I don't know, but like you mentioned, there was 2 things, and maybe the new NAFTA is going to get votes on both sides. We'll have to see. It certainly seems promising. And Senator, lastly, do you believe this Brett Kavanaugh will be confined? I know what you hope. You hope he doesn't, but do you believe he will?
I think this will be a very close vote. It hangs by a few undecided Democrats and Republicans. I haven't read this report yet. If I were to just guess today, he will be narrowly confirmed.
All right. Senator Chris Coons from the great state of Delaware. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today.